China have identified the cause of a mystery virus.
Crazy, so it was a bit chaotic.
There are fears of the rapidly spreading virus across the world.
Really nervous.
Serious, a huge shock to the system.
The coronavirus is the biggest threat the world has faced in decades.
There's lots of stresses.
Got no facility.
It was almost just a whirlwind.
All over the world, we are seeing the devastating impact of this invisible killer.
Lockdowns,
You must stay at
a
home.
nerve-wracking mix of emotion.
Save lives.
COVID was creeping to the door.
More than 3 billion people in nearly 70 different countries and territories have been asked to stay at home.
Confused, patient, lost.
At the very start, it was early in our progression into the swim spa market, and so we weren't really 100% sure of the best route to take, and people use those products for different reasons, whether it be training or swimming at an elite level down to just spending time with the family or relaxation. So we went down, I think it was November 2019 to Loughborough, so we kind of experienced the whole setup for British swimming, and I think at the time we actually met Mel Marshall, the head coach for British Swimming, and Ed Baxter, and also Adam Peaty as well. Had some conversations with Ed over a coffee, and yeah, we both had similar aspirations. We wanted to collaborate, work together, and start to build some great content around swimming, but also using our products for swim spas. We were interested in potential content that he might be able to create with us around those products. So when we first met Ed, it was very early in that process. He came up after that to our head office facility in Leeds to swim in one and to understand that, and we started to build content, and it was at that point I think that the team realised, hang on a minute, these products could be a great asset for our training and for what we want to do to push us on. So it wasn't until Ed Baxter swam in it in Leeds when I think they realised, okay, there's something here that could be very powerful for us.
The initial discussion with Jacuzzi was actually through Bedfordshire Hot Tubs and their owner, Jim Rumley. So he was a family friend, and my family member had mentioned that I was a swimmer. Jim was obviously, working with these amazing swim spas that Jacuzzi produce. Swimming one of these, could see it was quite a unique product. It was very beneficial from, various different aspects of swimming. I was doing a lot of private coaching at the time, could see how a lot of my clients could benefit from these. Jim introduced me to Andy at Jacuzzi, and then we kind of just went from there. And I remember I spoke to Andy a lot about how when I was in the swim spas I could feel, obviously you work it from a fitness perspective, but also from a technical perspective. You get that physical feedback that you don't get in the pool. And then when I was thinking about that for swimmers that I coach, being able to talk to them about that, and it can actually be really beneficial in some drills, having the extra buoyancy that some of the features of the tubs had, I could just see there was massive benefits to that.
I think when we heard the news about this pandemic thing, classic, you just thought most news channels are going to be blowing it out of proportion, it won't be anything, and we'd gone through some various health screening advice for when we were travelling back, which we would normally do anyway to keep the athletes healthy, particularly when they go into travel. Their immunity is pretty low, they're pretty immunity suppressed, so I was just like, well, it won't be anything really.
When we got back, we were aware of what was going on in the media. There was reports coming out of China of this virus, but I just thought of it as something that was going to be like bird flu or swine flu, where it never really grew into something that affected the whole world.
When it was coming over, I think, you saw it pop up in Italy before us, you saw it pop up obviously in China, and it was one of those things where you're like, oh, it's never going to come to my town or, where I live. And as soon as you started seeing cases pop up around England and around the country, it was like, okay, this is pretty serious.
There's murmurs of like lockdowns, or at least there's murmurs of potential like closures of stores and closures of facilities, and because of the hygiene aspect of what happened with COVID, swimming pools were one of the first on the kind of list.
And then we got the call from our bosses saying that from the moment of, I think it was something like mid-March, that the National Training Centre would be shut. So the Performance Centre, the Olympics at this point was still on. To paint the picture, we've got no facility, we've been preparing for 3.5 years. The Olympic Games are effectively in 14 weeks, and then that really does get quite stressful.
Yeah, it was a bit crazy. Like, we thought we had college national championships coming up. My parents would come out and my brother to come watch me, and that kind of got cancelled pretty last minute, probably like less than a week before it's supposed to happen. And then obviously at that point, the Olympic trials were still going ahead in the UK, so priority for me was to get back in, obviously, this country to be available to swim at the trials for the Olympics. My instant thing was just to get back here and get out of America, and at that time they were starting to lock down the country and stop flights out of America and all of this, so it was a bit chaotic.
My performance is one of those things where, for me, it's all about mental performance. So you choose your days where you need to be off, you choose your days where you need to be on. Thankfully, we have world-class facilities where we turn up and you can automatically get into that mindset. So once that's taken away, you're like, okay, I've got nothing at home. I've got a few TheraBands, and that is about it. We need obviously water to get the feel for the water. We need the water for aerobic. We need the water for anaerobic. So everything around our training, apart from gym, relies on the water. So once that was taken away from us, it did affect me mentally, because I was like, okay, I can't really do anything now. It's completely taken away my access to the facilities, and that's when it became very tough.
I think the biggest impact when you have athletes out of the water is you almost like have to double the time to get back. So I would say if you take 3 weeks out, it's 6 weeks to really get back. So we had some ground to make up. I think there was lots of horror stories at that time when the Olympics was still on but the world was closing. And I think, I can just, some of the funny stories what you think about now, but people were breaking into buildings just to be able to train. It was horrific. The actual relief came when they did cancel the Olympics, because it meant that people could just go, stop, you really need to stop.
Phone rings and it's Jim, and he's been speaking with Ed and Ed with the team at British Swimming, and there's you sort of immediately the request was, what if we used our showrooms? So we've got 30 showrooms around the UK. What if we used them showrooms and allowed swimmers who were training for the Tokyo Olympics to keep training and swimming those products in showrooms while swimming pools might get closed? And so that was an immediate no-brainer. So I wrote to all of our retail partners who have swim spas, and the resounding answer was absolutely yes.
Lockdown, I'd been liaising with Ed, who was a friend of mine, to see what we could do when the impending sort of closure of the country was going to happen. What then happened was that Ed's boss, Mel, made contact with me out of the blue, and she was, was really grateful, because by that stage we'd already arranged for one of the swim spas that we had to loan it to Ed to go into his garden. She was really excited about that, because all of a sudden the actual professional sport was no longer able to swim. She reached out to me and she asked if there's anything we could do with other swimmers. I said, yeah, I'll see what we can do. I knew that Jacuzzi are a really supportive company and they'd do anything they can to help me, because it was almost like needs must.
Just as we were pushing that programme to allow swimmers to go to those facilities, we had the full lockdown. So then all of a sudden our showrooms had to close, so we couldn't leverage those anymore. So then again, the kind of conversations moved on. Jim was driving those conversations through Mel and the team at British Swimming, and the view was, well, hang on a minute, if we can't bring them to us, let's take our products to them.
Mel, she approached me and she said, how many do you think I could do? And I said, well, I've got 1 or 2. And she said, well, we need 8. So I said, oh, okay, fine. What I did was I went back to Andy at Jacuzzi and said, can we help and see what we can do together?
Yeah, I mean, it was really worrying at that time because of the fact that the Olympics was on. So you're used to preparing at a certain level, and you need to kind of simulate that preparation under the rules that the government's put out. So it was really worrying. I think in terms of when you ask about emotion, I felt like there wasn't really one emotion that I didn't feel. You know, at times I felt confused, at times I felt impatient, at times I felt lost, at times I felt really aggressive and competitive towards, you know, the mission and getting it done. I felt anxious, I felt happy and present at certain things, so I just think it was almost like a rainbow of emotions through that period of time.
What we were thinking of was, Andy and I were saying that we felt something was going to happen where the whole country was going to close down, and we knew the fact that the swimmers were going to have a problem. Now, elite sport was originally going to be carrying on, but we felt that that would be difficult. Jacuzzi knew that we got swim spas in various parts of the country within the national network.
We were thinking a lot about generally how is this going to impact, what can we do to help support things, how do we actually use our products and our services to help people in this difficult moment. And given the circumstances, for us it looked like our showrooms would be closed for quite a sustained period of time, and we had a smaller amount of stock of swim spas at that time because the market wasn't as big as it is now for those products. Between Jim, Ed, Mel and the senior team at British Swimming and myself, there was a discussion around this could work. I presented that to our senior leadership team in the UK business, and immediately, yes, we wanted to drive that. We then went to the broader global business to get that approved at the stock value it was and for what we were trying to achieve. And obviously at that moment in time, it was so unknown. A quantity of our highest value products that were sat that could have been sold to bring cash back into the business, it was a massive risk.
After I'd spoken to Andy and he got over the initial shock of us needing another 6 swim spas, he went and did his magic with Jacuzzi, and bless them, they really were so supportive of the GB swimmers that he arranged for them to loan out another 6 swim spas. So then the situation was, what do we do? Once we actually then had the addresses, we then had to go and do the site surveys. Because we were effectively all in isolation then, I seconded my daughter to come in and be my helper. Anna, bless her, then had to actually go around. I think we did 550 miles in 2 days, and we went from Plymouth up to the Wirral and Crewe and then Loughborough, and actually went into each of those gardens. It was really strange because everybody had to wait inside the house while we were doing the measurements outside, and then we had to reverse it to go inside to work out where the fuse boards were and the logistics for actually getting the power out to the swim spas. Once we'd done the site surveys, what we decided to do is almost treat it like a military operation. We started on the 13th and we split into 2 teams, one which was an electrical team headed by Paul Taylor, and what he did was he went round each of the actual places, all 8 of them, and put all the actual wiring in, put new fuse boards in where necessary, so that when we followed up with the actual swim spas, we could then go and get them actually started up straight away. We then had to get the logistics of actually getting the swim spas into the homes. So we worked with a company called Cambridge Crane, who very kindly supplied us with a crane to actually go to the different locations. We just shifted them around the country. We did effectively in 5 days 8 installs over 2,100 miles we had to do in travel.
So I think in terms of Jim Rumley, they say superheroes don't always wear capes. He's one of them. I mean, what he went to, the lengths that he went to bring it to life were just incredible. There was so much going on from a pandemic point of view. There was still restrictions and limitations on how quick things could be done, and he had to adhere to all those rules still. So we had to create this space of getting the best environment that we could under the circumstances that we had. And that's what we did, and that's what we partnered with Jacuzzi, and they were instrumental in terms of helping keep that dream alive and keeping the preparation at the level that's needed to be ready for the Olympic Games. Training the athletes via Zoom was so weird because you obviously have 4 people on your screens, one in Ed Baxter's back garden with 45 turkeys, one over in Leek with 3 cows looking over the wall with Anna Hopkin, Adam Peaty in his garden, and then Luke Greenbank somewhere else. So it was just really strange, and you're trying to conduct the session with them all on FaceTime and talking to them and starting it. So I've never ever obviously experienced anything like that, but it worked. The level the athletes are at and the experience, was actually able to get a really good training session in, and we came up with some pretty creative ideas. And obviously the tub is really, really interactive. You know, there's different paces, the tether, all of the functions that are available. We were able to get, you know, good hour-and-a-half workouts in. And what was really interesting was you can actually design and individualise those programmes. So I'd have, you know, Olympic gold medalist Anna Hopkin doing one thing, Adam Peaty doing something else. But the funny story is one day it was raining, and never in my coaching career would I ever have thought that I would suggest. And I went inside, got a phone, got a Ziploc bag and put the phone in the bag. So effectively, preparing for the Olympics, I actually coached inside a freezer bag.
So obviously all my training, it was a huge shock to the system. It was one of those things where, you know, you didn't really know what to do. You have never been in that position before. Most of our training is going to be A1 aerobic training, so it's basically easy, long meters, getting the endurance around the shoulders, getting the endurance around the legs. And to a certain extent, other things can do that, such as cycling, you can get your legs going, or hand crank, but you know, at that time I didn't have any access to any of that. So it wasn't until Jacuzzi came along and, you know, offered their swim spa to train in.
Our sport is quite unique in that you need a pool to train, and getting that feel for the water back after having a month off really set me up nicely for when we were able to return to the pool.
I think that post-lockdown period was quite stressful going into Olympics, just because we hadn't had many competitions, and so it was quite hard to know where we were at in terms of racing. And also I'd just gone from a programme into America to a programme in Loughborough, so changed coach, changed programme, so there's a lot of unknowns for me.
Preparation at home, keeping the weight off, and for me that kind of space where we were so cautious around the Olympics and we were so cautious around, you know, that preparation, that I could still have somewhere at home where you could relax. You know, for me it was a great place to, you know, release that tension from the training that we had.
The 2 months before the Olympics, there's a whole host of emotions, because you're excited that it's nearly there. You're anxious that you might not get there, because effectively what happens is, from a COVID perspective, if they get a close contact, they have to be out of the environment for 2 weeks. So you're all the time, you've managed to get there, you've gone through the process of a lockdown, you've got all these amazing and innovative ideas about training, but then you get into that 2 months out and you're just getting a bit anxious, like, God, nobody get COVID. So it was quite an anxious time really, because we'd actually managed to get everybody in really good shape, physically, spiritually and mentally. So it was actually quite a nerve-wracking time, because it was almost like, as well, the rules were if you got COVID 2 weeks before, you weren't allowed to go. So we were on high alert, high lockdowns ourselves. So just as the rest of the countries and world's opening up a bit, we're actually going more and more into a bit more of a lockdown. So real mix of emotions and just like a desperation to I just remember one of the athletes got it in the other group, but we'd moved them out of the group because they weren't going to the Olympics, and it just felt like COVID was creeping to the door and you just needed to get on the plane and get to Tokyo.
So the Tokyo Olympics are here. We're super excited, but also super nervous. You know, we've got a lot more insight into what these teams have done to train, and then what these athletes have gone through to get where they want to go to. So we are equally as excited for them, but also we want them to achieve, you know, their goals, their dreams. We want them to be that Olympic champion.
I mean, the Olympic experience is just phenomenal anyway, and it's like a little bubble of just hive of pace and activity. And in the swimming we were really lucky because the venue was a bit smaller, the roof was low. Our actual swimming community actually made it a little bit more of an occasion. Like in the athletic stadium with no one being there, that really was silent. Whereas with us there was this little bit of a community that was able to build. So But when you're there, it's just a phenomenal experience, and it was relief that we'd got there. We'd got through the COVID procedures, no one had got COVID, and we were just pleased that we were going to be able to get those performances out after what effectively was 5 years of preparation.
Yeah, first Olympics, obviously incredibly excited. I just wanted to go there and give it my best shot and come away with what I feel was my best effort. As part of being an athlete is learning to adapt to any situation, and that was obviously a huge challenge, but I think that really showed the character of the group as a whole to kind of get through that and make it to the Olympics.
There's a lot of investment that goes into a championships. You know, you're working the whole year, the whole winter, a very, very tough block. So you are excited to obviously get the results, but also nervous that what if they don't pay off? What if this isn't going to go right? And you know, you've got to ignore those messages that your brain tries to tell you.
I think if you overthink things, sort of, especially sort of a month or a couple of weeks out, you almost put too much stress on yourself. They often said to us, like, until you get into the village and you're in the arena, you don't really need to think about racing, and I think that's quite a good mentality to have. I was trying to take a relaxed approach to it, and also it potentially is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity like that.
I have to say that I have a real immense pride in everybody that helped out with this whole project. It's pretty much the British Bulldog spirit. Nobody said we had to do it, but we all got stuck in. And the big thing was that once we were actually doing it, and to see the reaction to the actual swimmers and how important it was to them, it really made it worthwhile.
The whole experience, when you look back at it, it's just a bit of a whirlwind. I guess it made us a lot more resilient, a lot more adaptable, and you know, if we can't access a pool, there's other ways around that, and people are willing to help.
It has been an incredible journey from where I first started a relationship with Jacuzzi back in 2020, around the lockdowns, and I thought everything was going great. I broke a world record short course later that year, and then obviously going into this transition where all my life was changing. It wasn't necessarily about performance all the time and being selfish. It was very, very tough. But now I see myself in a place where I'm very happy and very content with what I've got and what I've done. But also that the brand of Jacuzzi is also evolving, and you know, I'm evolving with them.
We were challenged, but we coped. We weren't able to get everything we needed, but we found a way anyway, and we were adaptable and flexible, and we managed to get to the line in a good shape and do a really good job.
At the time, it just felt like, didn't feel like a big thing we did. Now, really proud, and the whole organisation reflects on that and goes, wow, what we did there was powerful, it was a great thing to do, was the right thing to do. And I think it brought our teams together behind a common goal. And I remember getting up at, I think it was about 2 a.m. to watch the swimming in Tokyo, and I was genuinely nervous to see the team perform, and I know how much they wanted to win and how much they all wanted to perform, and so it just added that extra edge to us watching and wanting British swimming to do so well.
I'm incredibly grateful to Jacuzzi for offering the swim spas in lockdown. I think they really helped kickstart that return to the pool, and that was kind of the origin point of being able to move on and train towards the Olympics.
Jacuzzi were just really vital during that lockdown phase, and I think just having the ability to actually be in water and have a coach sort of talking to you while you're doing it was really, really helpful, especially when I'd just moved programs. I had a new coach, but we were instantly in lockdown, so it was almost that first experience to being coached in water was in a swim spa, really.
I mean, I was incredibly proud of the athletes, because ultimately they'd had to suffer through what was a very dark time in terms of, you know, no racing, no competition, no travel.
For me, especially as an athlete who has to get the performance every day, Jacuzzi played a huge role in my wellness firstly, but also my recovery, and making sure that I was on my kind of top game come Monday. So I always see it as, Monday you start to get the wheels going, Tuesday you've definitely got them going, and then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, on Saturday you're going as hard as you can. And then on a Saturday afternoon or Sunday, you need to get that recovery so you can go again on the Monday. And that's what Jacuzzi did for me.
110% Jacuzzi contributed to the successes in the summer. I think that that space of time needed that equipment to help condition, support, and create a training environment for those athletes. And without that, there's no way that they would have been able to be so progressive in their journey beyond that. And I think that that space and that openness to support the people that were involved in that difficult situation was just incredibly inspiring, to be honest.
It was just an amazing feeling of pride. It was lovely getting messages and texts from them saying thank you, we wouldn't have got here without it, with you and Jacuzzi.
And I actually felt for the first time, I really felt like it was the NHS's job to take care of health, and it was sport's job to take care of hope. So what I mean by that is that we showed there was a way. We showed that throughout all that darkness, people had found a way to get to being a best version of themselves.